I'm going to choose a room that's about 250 square feet. In the middle of the new room, with the smell of fresh wood in the air, Lucas said with a joyful laugh. I stopped unpacking. Is she going for a room that's about 250 square feet? What in the world is Jessica talking about? I'm taking this corner room, Lucas announced, making me even more unable to grasp the situation. If you defy me, I won't be taking care of you, Lucas declared with a sneer, glaring at me. But inside, my mind was still in chaos. Huh? Whose house are we talking about? Feeling that something wasn't adding up with my eldest son and his wife, I questioned them. Huh? What? They both gave me a vacant look, and finally, I began to understand the situation. Ah, I see. That's what this is about. This could be a good opportunity to set things straight with my eldest son, Lucas, and his wife, Jessica, who have been running me ragged for years. I must not let this chance pass by. Alone, I felt a fiery determination inside me. My name is Catherine Thompson. I'm turning 65 this year. My husband passed away from pancreatic cancer 5 years ago. By the time the cancer was found, it was too late, and he passed away a few months later. The abruptness of it all left me unable to catch up emotionally, and for a while, I lived like a shell of a person, just eating, going to the bathroom, and bathing, simply passing the days. Lately, my legs have been getting worse, making it hard to live on my own. It was my eldest son, Lucas, who brought a ray of hope into my wilted life. That year, Lucas was getting married and he and his fiancée, Jessica, expressed a desire to live with me. I was taken aback when Lucas suddenly brought up cohabitation. Up to that point, he had been living in the company housing provided by the regional bank he worked for. I had simply assumed that they would naturally set up their own place once married. But contrary to my expectations, my son and his wife-to-be wanted to live with me. I hadn't even met Jessica yet, and I didn't know anything about her. But for me, having lost the love of my life and feeling a gaping hole in my heart, Lucas's offer to live together felt like a consolation sent from God. Of course, I'll contribute to the household expenses. Oh, I'm fine with it. I found myself quickly agreeing before I knew it, and Lucas smiled with satisfaction. Got it. Then I'll bring Jessica over next week. Take care, he said, and with those words, Lucas left. Despite his somewhat rough personality, I always thought that was just because he was in front of his parents, maybe showing some rebellion. To me, he was still my dear child. I felt as if my once lonely life had suddenly been illuminated. A week later, as promised, eldest son couple came to our house. Here we are. Despite it being our first meeting, I was surprised by how Jessica confidently strode in, her footsteps echoing loudly. Despite being the same age as Lucas, 30 years old, she wore a skirt shorter than knee length, her hair was dyed pink. And her nails were glittery and flamboyant. Nice to meet you. You're Jessica, right? Yeah, that's me. But, what's with this house? It's kinda run down and small, isn't it? I was taken aback as Jessica entered the house and immediately started criticizing it without even a proper greeting. That's true. But it's better than nothing, so bear with it. Sure. Lucas retorted with a dismissive tone, which confused me even more since just a week ago he had been so keen on moving in. Despite the sudden rudeness, I reminded myself that we were going to be living together from now on, and I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. So, I sat Lucas and Jessica down and served them some tea. Do you work, Jessica? There's no way I'm working, it's just too much hassle. Oh, I see. And what about you, do you work? No, I've been a homemaker. Wow, so you're living off your husband's pension? Must be nice. You can just live it up without working a day. Despite both of us being homemakers, I looked at Jessica in disbelief as she sarcastically laughed and called my situation quite the nice position. I do receive a survivor's pension, but that's my only income. It's nowhere near enough for a luxurious life, I'm just getting by day to day. Living leisurely is nothing but a pipe dream. More importantly, Jessica, how should we divide the household chores? Since we're both homemakers, maybe we can split them equally? Wanting to change the subject, I proposed this to Jessica. Living together means the three of us supporting and helping each other out in our daily lives. I assumed that since Lucas would be working during the day and contributing financially, Jessica would be willing to help with the chores. However, she frowned visibly at my suggestion. Divide the chores? No way, you should handle all that. I don't know anything about this house. Plus, I'm busy hanging out with friends. With that sharp retort, Jessica looked at me with a piercing gaze as if dumping all the responsibilities on me. Well, then, just help out whenever you can, please. I couldn't ask too much of Jessica since we had just met today, so I ended up conceding on the issue of chores. Jessica wore a smirk as if she had one. I felt overwhelmed and dismayed thinking about our future life together. Living with 3 other people was a far cry from the married life I had initially imagined. First off, Lucas would say he's too busy with work and wouldn't come home until late at night. True to her initial declaration, Jessica didn't do any household chores. I thought she might at least be able to take out the trash, but she seemed to have trouble getting up in the morning and couldn't manage to do it on time. Reluctantly, I found myself doing all the housework for 3. Before moving in together, I thought this would fill the void of missing my husband, but now I regretted it, thinking maybe I was better off alone. Jessica wasn't just neglecting the household chores, she was out and about every day. Given her flashy appearance, I had suspected she might be a bit wild, but to be out playing every day really was quite the nice position indeed. Every time Jessica came home, she was always carrying shopping bags from well-known international brands. These were brands that sold luxury items I could never afford on my pension. When I asked, "How did you afford these?" she laughed through her nose and said, "Obviously, I bought them with my allowance." However, I knew Lucas's salary wasn't high enough to afford multiple high-end brand items. If Jessica had been saving up her allowance bit by bit to buy these things, I could understand, but buying brand-name items nearly every day doesn't leave room to save. I wondered where she could possibly be getting so much money. And there was another unexpected issue for me. Lucas wasn't contributing financially to the household. About a month after we started living together, I thought Lucas would have transferred some of his salary into our household account by now, so I checked at the bank. But there was no money from Lucas. Before we started living together, I remembered Lucas saying, "I'll contribute financially to the household." Well, it's only been a month, maybe he's just late or forgot, I thought, and went home without much suspicion that day. However, as 2 months, then 3 months passed, there was still no financial contribution from Lucas. I finally decided to tell him that it was impossible to cover the living expenses for 3 people with just my pension. Could you contribute a little to the household? The budget for groceries is really tight. Ah, sorry, I forgot. I'll make sure to put in some next time. Hearing the words "I forgot," I felt relieved and believed that Lucas would start contributing financially from next month. However, his promise seemed to be just an excuse to placate a child, and he never actually made the transfer. I pleaded with Lucas several times, but he was usually drunk by the time he got home and quickly forgot what I had said. Or perhaps he was pretending to forget. When it became clear that I wouldn't receive any money from Lucas, I had no choice but to find a part-time job. I started working at a local flower shop. Returning to work after so long was exciting, but the long hours were tough on my body, which was already past retirement age. Still, the pressure of earning enough to support 3 people weighed heavily on me. I worked 6 to 8 hours during the day, similar to a full-time job, then came home to prepare dinner for 3. Jessica, as usual, did not start helping with the chores even though I had begun working. On the contrary, she would throw tantrums over the meals I cooked, like a small child. One evening, she flipped her plate over and exclaimed, "What is this? It tastes awful. I wanted curry. Make it again." It wasn't just one day that such incidents occurred. Again and again, Jessica would find fault with the meals I prepared based on her mood for the day. I felt a surge of anger and sadness, but realized that arguing with the unreasonable Jessica was futile, so I silently remade the meal. I wanted to break free from this life that felt like slavery. I can't go on like this. Instinctively, I knew I couldn't go on like this. So, I decided to find a hobby to distract myself and asked the manager of the flower shop, "Can you think of any hobbies I could do at home?" The manager, Mrs. Smith, was a young woman in her 40s who you could tell must have been very beautiful in her 20s, fitting the image of a florist perfectly. "How about something handmade? You're welcome to use the flowers that we're going to discard." Following the manager's advice, I decided to make jewelry using flowers. Making jewelry was a lot of fun. I was naturally skilled with my hands and quickly got the hang of making jewelry that looked just as good as what you'd find in a store. The manager, who was knowledgeable, even showed me a site where I could sell my handmade creations. Just out of curiosity, I put the jewelry I made up for sale on a website. Just out of curiosity, I posted some of my jewelry on the selling site, and within a week, orders started coming in, and I began to earn an income from it. The joy of earning money from a hobby was exhilarating, and I made jewelry in every spare moment I had. Jessica scoffed at my efforts, saying, "What's this? People actually buy these?" But I ignored her. When she realized I wasn't paying attention to her, she tried to annoy me by saying, "You're just like a burden to society, an old person who's useless." But I didn't react to that either. No matter what Jessica said, I wasn't afraid anymore. 5 years had passed since I started making jewelry, and I turned 65. Recently, I bought a house nearby. I loved the house I was living in because of the memories with my husband, but it was getting old, and everything was starting to fall apart. So I was satisfied to be able to buy a new house. And as I was thinking about living there without my eldest son couple, Jessica peeked over my shoulder at the floor plan of my new home. "Wow, is this a new house? What's this, are you moving?" Jessica exclaimed with a cheerfulness I had never heard from her before. Looking at floor plans is indeed fun, and I like it too, but I never imagined that Jessica, who always seemed so angry, would get this excited. "Yes, that's right. Wow, it's really big." Jessica was absorbed in the floor plan, forgetting herself. For the first time in 5 years of living together, I saw a childlike side to Jessica. After that, I was busy buying furniture for the new house and packing up for the move. Lucas and Jessica, as usual, did whatever they pleased, paying no mind to my busyness. On the day of the move, I had asked some acquaintances to help with the big items, so I left the house with just one suitcase. "The new house is big, isn't it?" "It's spacious, I've seen the layout." The eldest son couple seemed eager to see the new house, and they were more excited than usual. I took Lucas and Jessica to the new home. Upon seeing the stylish black exterior, wooden door, and the large garden, both of them exclaimed, "Wow!" The garden was my own personal touch, something I insisted on for my hobby of growing flowers. When we entered, the expansive room spread out before us, and I felt very satisfied. Having bad knees, I made sure the house was single-story and had handrails installed, which turned out to be the right decision. "Whoa! It's super spacious and super clean." "It's more than I expected." The two of them, eyes sparkling as if they owned the place, walked around the house while I was unpacking, cheering every now and then. That's when I began to feel a sense of unease, thinking, After they had looked through all the rooms, they came back to where I was. "I'm going to choose a room that's about 250 square feet. In the middle of the new room, with the smell of fresh wood in the air, Jessica said with a joyful laugh. I stopped unpacking. Is she going for a room that's about 250 square feet? What in the world is Jessica talking about? "I'm taking this corner room," Lucas announced, making me even more unable to grasp the situation. "If you defy me, I won't be taking care of you," Lucas declared with a sneer, glaring at me. But inside, my mind was still in chaos. "Whose house are we talking about?" Feeling that something wasn't adding up with my eldest son and his wife, I questioned them. Huh? What? They both gave me a vacant look, and finally, I began to understand the situation. Ah, I see. That's what this is about. This could be a good opportunity to set things straight with my eldest son, Lucas, and his wife, Jessica, who have been running me ragged for years. I must not let this chance pass by. Alone, I felt a fiery determination inside me. I bought this house for myself. I explained the reasons for buying the house to my eldest son and his wife, who were standing there in front of me. I told them about the original house deteriorating with age, my thoughts on wanting to end our cohabitation, and how I considered that it might be more comfortable for Lucas and Jessica to live on their own without me.
Ending the cohabitation? What are you talking about? Yes. I haven't heard anything about this. I thought we were going to live in this house.
The two were bewildered by my confession. From my perspective, I couldn't comprehend the nerve of eldest son couple, who seemed intent on living with me indefinitely. Moreover, I never said a single word about us living together in this new house. If we were going to live together, I surely would have consulted them about the floor plan to some extent. I hadn't discussed anything about the house with my eldest son couple, so the fact that they assumed they would be living here too was a real surprise.
I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, but I thought if I explained it in detail, you might insist on coming along. And since I was only packing my things, I thought you would have realized. Even today, I assumed you were just coming to see my new place. After all, Jessica, you dislike everything about my cooking and cleaning, don't you? I never thought that you would actually want to continue living with me.
When I said that, heavy with irony, Jessica was at a loss for words, uttering only a stifled
But that's weird. How come you have the money to buy such a house? I've looked through the household account as much as I could and never saw that kind of money. Never mind.
Lucas's face turned pale as if he had let something slip by accident. I was aware that Lucas had been taking money from the household funds. I had stayed silent because I was waiting to see when Lucas would reflect on his actions. If he had shown even the slightest hint of remorse, I might have consulted him about the new house. But Lucas hadn't just failed to contribute financially to the house, he had been using the household money for himself, so I had resolved not to hold back anymore. I earned the money myself. It was about 5 years ago, I think. I started making jewelry as a hobby, remember? The florist manager suggested it to me. Initially, I was just selling a little bit on a sales website, but then a famous influencer featured my jewelry on their social media. After that, my creations started selling like crazy, and my income increased significantly. Yes. The reason I, who was living on a pension, could afford a house was because of my success in selling jewelry. Of course, even with the buzz, jewelry sales alone wouldn't have made enough money to buy a house. I received invitations from various apparel and jewelry companies, participated in tie-up projects, and got advertisements. I wanted to use the substantial amount of money I earned, which I couldn't have achieved with just my part-time job, to buy a new house because of the strained living situation with my eldest son couple.
It's a lie! There's no way you can earn money like that!
Jessica screamed in denial of the reality. Up to this year, when she turned 35, Jessica had hardly ever worked. Yet she was always splurging on luxury brands, indulging in extravagance. It was no surprise that someone like her couldn't understand how to earn money. I know about you, Jessica. I heard you dropped out of high school, had a fight with your parents, and ran away from home. You were homeless, lied about your age to work nights, right? I can sympathize with that, even if it wasn't the right thing to do. But after quitting that job, just wandering around aimlessly, hanging out with bad influences, splurging on luxury items, and then it even led to shoplifting, didn't it?
No!
Jessica's face showed shock, clearly not expecting me to confront her about shoplifting. I had suspected Jessica of shoplifting about a year after we started living together. I always thought it was strange that she was wearing only luxury items right from the start. There's no way Lucas's salary could cover the cost of such high-end brands. I immediately suspected shoplifting. One afternoon, when Jessica went out, I discreetly followed her and, sure enough, she was guilty. I could have confronted her right there and then, but knowing Jessica, she would have likely talked her way out of it. So, I decided to record evidence of her shoplifting on my phone, thinking that if she didn't change her ways, I would turn it over to the police someday. I have proof. Look, I said, showing her the video. Jessica's face tensed even more upon seeing it. With the evidence before her, she couldn't say anything in return and just hung her head low.
And Lucas, stealing money from the bank where you work, that's just the lowest of the low. You must have been in debt, right? How did you know that, Mom?
Now it was Lucas who started to tremble. To them, I must have seemed like a police officer about to question them about the crimes they had committed.
You see, the daughter of my florist's manager just started working as a new graduate at the same company as you this year, in the same department, no less. She told me that she saw you pocketing the money that customers entrusted to the bank. Being new and worried about making a false accusation against a senior, she hasn't spoken up about it to anyone. But I've thought to myself, if anyone at that bank would steal their own company's money, it would be you.
This is what I heard, so there's no evidence, but given that Lucas was giving Jessica a substantial allowance every month, never contributing any money to the house, and actually stealing from the household funds, it seemed likely to be true.
That's Smith. I educated her thoroughly, yet she's so ungrateful.
Lucas fumed, shaking with anger at the manager's daughter's betrayal. Hearing Lucas's words, I took it as an admission of his theft and seized the moment to lash out.
You educated her? You probably thought you were the most important person in this house, didn't you? Acting all high and mighty at work too, looking down on everyone else.
But too bad. That won't work with me.
This house is a prime example. I earned the money and bought this house with my own effort.
You're not the great one here.
Of course, I'm not saying I am either, but at least I won't let a house that I bought with money I worked hard for be taken away by you too.
Now, please leave immediately. My scream sent Lucas and Jessica fleeing from the house in terror. I breathed a sigh of relief. From tomorrow, I would no longer have to see those two. Just the thought made my heart feel lighter. Later, I reported Lucas and Jessica's crimes to the police. The police immediately looked into it. And frankly, there wasn't much to investigate. The evidence of Jessica's shoplifting and Lucas's theft was clear as day on the security cameras. They were taken away by the police without any fuss, and seeing my child and his wife being led away, I felt no stir of emotion. I could only think they had to fend for themselves now. Initially, I was pleased with my son and his wife's intentions to comfort me when we started living together, but as I lived with these two who did as they pleased, my stress accumulated. In retrospect, it's clear that when they brought up living with me, their true goal was to have me do all the housework while they lived comfortably. Saying goodbye to a life of being insulted and having money taken by Lucas and Jessica, I now feel refreshed. Even if they are released by the police, they'll be too busy paying off their debts. I'm certain their marriage will fall apart, given they can barely manage household chores. But I am resolute in my decision not to help them ever again. I've vowed to lead a life free from any ties to my eldest son and his wife. While continuing my part-time job at the flower shop, I've been putting even more effort into making jewelry. When I revealed that the flowers used in my jewelry came from the flower shop where I work, an unprecedented number of customers started to visit. Responding to customers' requests to use flowers as parts for their jewelry, I also began selling flowers specifically for this purpose. Manager showed concern, saying, "If your jewelry business is that successful, you could just focus on that," but I shook my head. After all, it was a hobby recommended to me by Manager Smith. I believe if using flowers from the florist in my jewelry helps the shop flourish, then that's the best outcome. I plan to continue walking this new path in life, enriched by both my work and my hobby.
Mom's been in an accident and taken to the hospital. Please, take me there.
I begged my husband, tears streaming down my face. I had just received a call that my mother was in critical condition, unconscious after a traffic accident. But when I told my husband, he said, "I can't, I'm off on a trip with my colleague," and rejected my pleas. Even as I persisted, he seemed to mock me with a sneer. To me, the trip is more important.
Attending someone's bedside is a waste of time. I'm definitely not going.
My name is Erica, I'm 29. I married Ken, a year my senior, 2 years ago, and we both work full-time. We met at college. There were many classmates, so it was hard to talk to everyone, but we got closer after sitting next to each other at a party one day. We also discovered we both were only children raised by single mothers after losing our fathers early, which brought us closer quickly. We started going out often, and it naturally led to a relationship. As we both settled into our jobs after graduating from college, Ken proposed. We're both satisfied with our careers, so we haven't thought about children yet. We have talked about buying a house when the time comes. We're currently renting a place, and both of our homes are nearby. Since both of our fathers passed away, our mothers live alone. My mother, Sally, and my mother-in-law, Mary, get along very well. They got along because they were close in age and had raised their children on their own without remarrying. They became friends, often having coffee and traveling together. I was surprised because I never expected them to get so close, but it's great seeing them happy as they seem to have a lot of fun together. Mary treats me well too. However, Ken seems to dislike that Mary prioritizes my mother over him. He has a strong attachment to his mother. Before marriage, I knew he cherished his mother from his behavior. I was also brought up in a single-parent household, so I can understand his feelings. After getting married and starting living together, I saw his true nature. Once, when my mother sent a picture of her having lunch with Mary. The message said, "I'm having lunch with Mary now," and a picture of the two of them smiling was attached, and I remember naturally smiling as well. "Hey, Ken, it looks like your moms are having lunch right now." "Look, they sent me a photo," I said, and showed the image to Ken, who was just at home, but as soon as he saw it, he was in a good mood. It got so bad that I clicked my tongue.
Is this some kind of spite? What did you say?
I didn't know he disliked my mother then. It was true that Ken often didn't talk much in front of his mother, but I thought that was because he was nervous because he had only been married for a short time. I never imagined that he would shun my mother just because she was on good terms with his own mother.
Because of that person, my mother has been turning down my invitations to dinner lately. I've been telling her that she has plans with Sally. Don't you know that your mother should be a little more reserved?
I had no idea that Ken was thinking such a thing, and I was shocked to hear him say something bad about my mother. My mother-in-law apparently realized early on that Ken hated my mother. Mary realized Ken's feelings early and scolded him during dinner when he was being sarcastic to my mother.
"Ken, what's this attitude towards Sally? Stop it."
"What's this? Mom always supports this person. You've always said that I'm your precious son. It's funny how you prioritize someone you've recently become friends with over your own son." Ken retorted, saying, "I'm sure not, but to be honest, I couldn't help but think that his obsession with his mother-in-law was abnormal." Later, Mary apologized to me and my mother when Ken wasn't around.
"I might have spoiled him too much.
I'm sorry."
"Mary, there's no need to be worried. I don't either. Ken really loves you."
My mother, calm by nature, so she doesn't usually get angry at people. This time as well, she pretended to understand Ken without blaming him, but I quickly realized that she was actually hurt in her heart. Ken's attitude worsened, criticizing my mother every chance he got. He has never openly attacked his mother because his stepmother protects her. However, whenever my mother and mother-in-law seemed to be getting along well, she complained to me, and eventually started saying bad things about my mother on a daily basis. Early in our second year of marriage, we had a huge fight. After the argument, the problem was never resolved, and since then, our relationship became strained, and we spoke less. Lately, Ken's been coming home late and going out alone on weekends. When I asked, he said it's just work and needs to work more time, but something felt off. Even when he said that, I wasn't very convinced and couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort. Then, one Sunday, when we were both off, Ken was packing for something. Apparently, there is no day off work today. As I was about to ask Ken why he was packing, a call came through on my smartphone. An unknown number displayed on the screen, and with curiosity, I answered only to find out it was the police on the line. They confirmed I was Sally's daughter and then dropped the bombshell. "Your mother has been in a traffic accident." My mind went blank.
My mom!
They told me she had been taken to the hospital in critical condition, unconscious. After getting the hospital's name, my shaking hands managed to end the call. Tears flooded as I struggled to think, but knew I needed to get to the hospital. Without a driver's license, I pleaded with Ken to take me.
Ken, it's awful. Mom's been in an accident. She's at the hospital. Please, we need to go now.
But Ken just turned a disgusted face towards me. Huh? I've got a trip with my colleague now, I'll miss the gathering time. Deal with it yourself, he firmly refused.
A trip? I had no idea it was today.
I realized why he was packing, but he hadn't informed me at all. He then floored me by saying the trip was for 2 weeks.
You can't be serious. Mom might.
Quiet down, the trip is more important to me.
Besides, your mom's just an unrelated old woman to me. Visiting her would be a waste of time. I'm not going.
Ken mocked me with his cruel words. Get away, I'm busy, and I got a plane to catch, he said, pushing past me, humming as he packed his clothes into his suitcase. Furious, I yelled, "You're the worst. Just do whatever you want," and stormed out to take a taxi to the hospital. Ken left for his trip as planned. He had no idea of the crisis unfolding around me during the trip. I tried calling him repeatedly to no avail, and the 2 weeks passed without any contact. 2 weeks later, Ken came home in high spirits. I greeted him with a cold stare. I have to go give my mom a souvenir now. I wonder if she's doing well. He cheerfully talked about visiting his mom with souvenirs, but I silently agreed to go with him to his mother's house. On the way, he joyfully talked about the gifts he bought. Not a word about my mom's accident. When they arrived at my in-laws' house, Ken stopped them as they were about to open the front door. Huh? Why is it locked? Arriving at a locked front door puzzled him. His mom didn't usually lock it when home. Is Mom out? He mumbled. Pushing past him, I used the spare key I had to open the door.
Why do you have the house keys?
Ken looked suspicious, but I didn't respond. Ken, entering before me, tilted his head as he couldn't find his mom. Stopping him from heading to the living room, I directed him. Not that way. Come this way, I said, leading Ken to another room. The door was open, and inside was a fresh portrait of his mother, Mary.
What? What's going on? What is this?
Holding back anger, I sighed and explained. Mary passed away while you were on your trip. The funeral is already over, I said, and Ken glared at me furiously.
Don't joke, this can't be. Why should she die? It was your mother who was supposed to be.
I was appalled by his disgraceful outburst, but told him calmly what happened after my mother's accident. My mom woke up after the accident. She's recovering from a fracture. My mother is still in the hospital, but thankfully, she was alive thanks to the medical team's efforts. Ken, still not understanding, asked. Then why is my mom? I struggled to say, the day your mom fell from the pedestrian bridge, she was on her way to our house. I suggested he had told her about the trip.
You told your mom in advance that you were going on a trip, right?
Huh? Oh, I did say that. Mary has been distrustful of you lately. She says she hasn't been able to contact you often. That's why I think she was planning on coming to see if you were really going on the trip. When I said that, Ken's eyes widened in surprise. A month ago, Mary told me that she used to hear from Ken almost every day with calls and texts, but recently, the communication had almost stopped. She'd try to call him because of urgent matters, and when he'd call back, he'd say he was busy and hang up quickly. Mary thought maybe Ken was just getting older and not clinging to his mom as much. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Ken was hiding something. That's why, driven by suspicion, she went to check if Ken really was on a company trip at the exact time I received the call about my mom's accident. It turns out that Mary had passed away carrying the souvenirs she bought with my mom on a day trip last month, probably intending to drop by under the pretext of giving us those gifts. I was so distraught that day, I couldn't think of anything but getting to the hospital as quickly as possible, and I didn't have the presence of mind to tell Mary about my mom's accident. Mary had taken the bus to the stop nearest to our apartment and must have been walking the rest from there. There's a pedestrian overpass on the way, and it seems she fell while crossing it. Witnesses say she lost her footing just before reaching the top and tumbled down. An ambulance was called immediately, but she had hit her head hard. And so, Mary was gone. After explaining all this to Ken, I glared at him fiercely.
After learning about Mary, I called you so many times.
For 2 weeks, no matter how I tried to reach him, Ken never answered his phone or returned my emails. Since there was no other relative who could arrange the funeral, I did all. I had to take on that role and managed to get through Mary's funeral while my mom was still in a critical state.
These past 2 weeks, you've been ignoring my calls and gallivanting around, right? This whole thing has shown me exactly what kind of person you are. I'm divorcing you.
When I declared that, Ken just collapsed to the floor and started bawling.
You. How can you talk about divorce right after your mom passed? And I didn't contact you because I was always with my coworkers. I didn't have the time.
He blubbered, making excuses. I was getting even angrier. Stop lying. I shouted, pulling out a piece of paper from my bag and thrusting it in front of Ken. It was a schedule for the trip I found in Ken's room.
It says here the trip was from the 12th to the 19th for 1 week. But you were gone from the 5th to the 19th.
Right before you left, you said the trip was 2 weeks.
So where were you and what were you doing for that first week? Well,
I know what you've been up to. You've been cheating, haven't you? And you spent that week with her, didn't you? I said, confident in my accusation. Ken stopped crying and started to panic. What are you talking about, cheating?
I took the rest of the week off to travel with a friend for a break.
I've been so busy at work lately. Sick of his lies, I pulled out a smartphone from my pocket. The moment Ken saw that, his face turned pale. This phone was Ken's, found in his wardrobe while he was away. There's probably another smartphone in Ken's bag. He probably had another phone in his bag to communicate with his mistress. Ken had said he couldn't contact me while he was away, but he had left his regular phone at home, so of course, he wouldn't notice any calls.
You're full of lies. You left this phone at home to spend time with your lover, didn't you?
When I placed the smartphone in front of Ken, he started shaking and banged his fist on the floor. Yeah, that's right. I've been fed up with you for a long time. I have someone else I love now, he yelled defiantly, and then, wait, how did you know where to find the phone? You didn't snoop through my room while I was gone, did you? I was appalled. I glanced at Mary's portrait, apologizing to her in my mind for this display before responding. Mary told me, I said, and Ken choked on his words. After a big fight over my mom, Ken started coming home late and going out alone on his days off, claiming to be working. When I started feeling suspicious because of his unnatural periods of unavailability, I talked to Mary about it. Mary, who also had her doubts about Ken, gave me some advice.
He's always had a habit of hiding things that don't suit him. Like a bad test score or a glass that your father cherished that he broke by accident. He used to keep these things carefully in the back of his wardrobe. If there were a bunch of towels in the back of the drawer, I would probably hide them there.
After my mother-in-law passed away, I remembered those words and searched in Ken's room, and as expected, I found a smartphone.
No way, Mom did that to you.
Ken seemed genuinely shocked to find out his beloved mother, Mary, had doubted him. Despite his dismay, I felt nothing for him and sternly told him, because of what happened, I am asking you the divorce, and I'm willing to talk to a lawyer and take this to court if necessary. Ken groaned, but, realizing he had no escape, he reluctantly agreed. After we properly divided our assets, the divorce went through without a hitch. But the following month, just as I was settling into my new life, Ken called. Reluctantly, I answered, and he blurted out, "Erica. Please, I need your help."
What now, Ken? What happened?
He was in trouble because his company found out about Mary's funeral. Mary had been listed as a dependent for Ken's benefits, so he was supposed to return her insurance card to the company after her passing. The company only learned of her death through this process, and it became apparent that her funeral happened while Ken was supposed to be on a company trip. His colleagues viewed him coldly, considering him an ungrateful son for not attending his own mother's funeral. Ken tried to shift the blame by saying I didn't inform him about the funeral. However, it probably wasn't a good idea to rush and tell so many people. He told different stories to different people at his workplace. It led to inconsistencies that revealed his lies. Already seen as irresponsible, his repeated lies made people doubt his character even more, leading to his isolation and eventual resignation from his job. Now without an income, Ken was living off Mary's inheritance at her house.
The neighbors found out I didn't attend the funeral, and it's awkward just walking outside. I thought about selling the house, but it's old and won't sell.
Ken is recognized by the neighbors as a bastard son, and seems to be uncomfortable even walking outside. So he made arrangements to sell my in-laws' house and move in as soon as possible, but since it's an old house, there doesn't seem to be any sign of it selling.
Erica, let's start over. Remarry me, and let's live together again.
I was disgusted when I heard those words. I realized he only reached out because he was in a tough spot, and I replied firmly.
Don't be ridiculous. I want nothing to do with you, especially not a remarriage. I beg you, if you keep this up, I don't know you anymore. You should just live with the person you're cheating on with instead of me.
When Ken refused with all his might, he began to mumble something. No, actually, I've already broken up with my partner. He continued to beg, revealing that his affair partner had left him after finding out about Mary's funeral and that he had been married all along. Ken apparently hid the fact that he was married, and was dumped by the woman he was furious with, so he is now alone. I told him coldly, "You got what you deserved. I have no intention of being with someone like you." As I was about to hang up, Ken frantically said, "Wait. If you won't agree to remarry, I'll come to your house and talk directly. You're at your parents' place, right?" I cut him off with a lie, "No, I'm not there," to which he quickly asked,
"Then where are you?"
"I'm not telling you.
And by the way, I've changed jobs, so even if you wait outside my old workplace, it won't do you any good. I've told everyone to call the police if they see you around."
I decided to sell my parents' house in order to distance myself from Ken as much as possible due to this incident. However, since my parents' house is quite old, it is unlikely that they will find a buyer. So, with my mother's consent, I turned it into a vacant lot and sold it. Speaking of my mother, she was finally discharged from the hospital recently, but she lost her mother-in-law, who was a dear friend, and she is feeling quite haggard. So I moved to another place where I could live quietly with my mother. As a result, I quit the company I was working for and changed jobs.
Then at least tell me where you are. I was also visiting your mother, who has been taking care of me until now.
Ken was desperately trying to find out where I was, but his words made me angry and my voice was surprisingly cold.
Taking care of you? You've been complaining about my mother a lot, but don't say such convenient words now. Besides, my mother also says she doesn't want to see you again. Hey, wait a minute, Erica!
Ken was still yelling something, but I ended the call without mercy. After hanging up, I blocked his number and later changed it. I later learned that Ken couldn't manage his savings, and he was currently in a difficult situation. Ken is struggling with debt and unable to find steady work, resorting to day jobs and part-time work. As for my mother and me, we started anew elsewhere and were free from the stress related to Ken. She had been unable to visit Mary's grave due to her hospital stay and our move. It seems like she still hasn't come to terms with the fact that Mary has passed away, and she often cries looking at photos and videos of her dear friend. "I want to go see Mary soon," she says sadly, so I promised we would visit the grave soon, carefully planning to avoid running into Ken. I'm focused on supporting my mother and making the most of our lives in this new place.
You collapsed? Like I care. Answer me immediately when I call you, you waste of space.
My husband yelled at me without a hint of worry as I was being urgently transported to the hospital with our child in a dangerous state in my womb.
Here we're starving, waiting for your awful dinner, and you're comfortably napping in the hospital. That's enough. I'm going to eat out with my parents, you make your own way home.
I could feel my husband's fury through the phone, accusing me as if I had done something terribly wrong, making me shrink back in fear, thinking only of the child in my womb that I must protect. I tried to speak, but a sound from the phone stopped me from continuing. I am a housewife, currently pregnant. Previously, I worked as a cosmetics salesperson. I loved my job and took pride in it. I had many loyal customers who specifically asked for me, and I made decent sales, often being recognized within the company. The certificates and mementos I received are still carefully stored in my room, and I look back at them occasionally for a boost of morale. I met my husband at a mixer organized by a colleague, and we dated before getting married. Right after we married, I found out I was pregnant, and I wanted to use the maternity leave system to keep working. However, because there was a risk of miscarriage if I continued working, I had no choice but to quit. I honestly had reservations about leaving my job. But I resolved to do my best to support our family from now on. While I rejoice at our baby's growth with each hospital checkup, there are many days when my body doesn't move as I want it to due to the pregnancy, which frustrates me. It can't be helped, that's how pregnancy is. Don't rush, say friends who have been through childbirth, trying to encourage me. But my husband doesn't seem to think so. I must appear to him like a lazy, useless wife.
Hey, where's my lunch? Just sandwiches?
I'm sorry, I couldn't stand the smell of side dishes. I could only manage to make sandwiches. If it's not enough, could you please buy some side dishes at the grocery store?
What's the point of being a stay-at-home wife?
Yeah. I'm just not feeling well. Sorry.
You know, you always use your pregnancy as an excuse, but being pregnant isn't a sickness, so stop making excuses. Fine. I'll eat lunch out. You deal with the sandwiches.
At first, my husband was happy that we were having a child, but gradually his attitude towards me has gotten worse. He no longer comes with me to the hospital, blames me for not keeping up with the housework, and does nothing but berate me every day. He wasn't like this oppressive person when we met. But maybe he's tired, too. He's become a mentor to a new employee at work, apparently. He's been so busy, so probably, his lack of patience has made him rough towards me. By the time this child is born, hopefully, his busy period will have settled down, and we can live happily as a family. It's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. I rub my slowly growing belly and reassure myself. Struggling with a body and a life that won't cooperate. I encourage myself and do the best I can, but my relationship with my husband doesn't improve. On top of that, my parents-in-law have started dropping by unannounced lately, and it's become a real source of stress.
How can our son live in such a dirty place? What will you do when the baby arrives? How are you going to manage the hygiene?
Right, honey? Yes, it is worrisome indeed. I'm sorry.
After all the trouble we went to come here because we're worried, don't you have any hospitality?
Alcohol.
And prepare some carpaccios or something nice to eat.
Come on, hurry up. I haven't prepared anything at home. If you had called, I would have prepared something.
Enough with the excuses. Just go buy something and get it ready. Hey, why did you marry such a girl?
I really wonder why I messed up choosing a wife. Hurry up and go. And with that, I felt the chilly air around me as I left for the store, heavily pregnant. This wasn't the first or second time. Every time the parents-in-law come, they criticize everything from cleaning to cooking, and my husband joins in. Even when I do everything I can, he never defends me, just adds more criticism. As I was struggling with my physical discomfort, I managed to pick up the items requested by the parents-in-law at the grocery store, and just as I tried to lift the bags, my vision went white and I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was met with a stark white ceiling. There was an 4 needle in my arm. As my consciousness slowly cleared, a nurse noticed and called a doctor, who explained I had collapsed from overwork and had been brought to the hospital by ambulance. I was relieved to hear the baby was safe. However, I was strongly advised to stay in the hospital for a few days to rest. They said to contact my family later, and when I checked my phone, there were several missed calls from my husband. He must have been worried about me not returning from the store. After the 4 was finished, I moved to a space where I could make phone calls and dialed my husband. But the voice that answered after a few rings was full of anger.
Who do you think you are, ignoring my calls, you good for nothing?
I flinched at those words. I'm sorry, I collapsed at the grocery store and was brought to the hospital by ambulance. They put me on an 4 and said I should be observed for a few days.
You collapsed? Like I care. Answer me immediately when I call you, you slowpoke. Stop it with the harsh words. It's bad for the baby's prenatal education.
I was met with my husband's verbal abuse over the phone. He seemed quite upset that I hadn't answered despite his multiple calls. Not wanting our baby to hear such awful words, I instinctively cut him off.
Here we're starving, waiting for your awful dinner, and you're comfortably napping in the hospital. That's enough. I'm going to eat out with my parents, you make your own way home.
Even knowing I had been taken to the hospital, my husband yelled at me without any concern or care. I could feel my husband's fury through the phone. I cringed in fear, not wanting my unborn child to hear such filthy words, and instinctively covered my ears. Then, before I could speak, the call abruptly ended. Not that I was expecting anything, but I felt disheartened by my husband's reaction and returned to my hospital room. As soon as I entered the room, tears started to fall, one after another. Once they started, they flowed uncontrollably. As I covered my face, a calm and kind voice asked, "Are you okay?" I looked up to see the face of a woman. A face I could never forget. The woman offering me a towel was a customer I had become close to when I worked as a salesperson. Claire.
Yes, it's me, Chloe. I'm so happy you remember me. To meet again like this, it must be fate. I could never forget you, Claire.
The woman, lively and laughing, was unmistakably the Claire I knew. Back then, Claire was a woman who had just gone through a divorce, with a child, lost confidence in herself, and hadn't worn makeup in years. I approached her as she aimlessly looked around the cosmetics counter and asked, "Would you like to try some makeup?" And then I applied makeup for her. Seeing her face beautifully made up for the first time in a long while, Claire seemed to relax and even shed a tear. I remember feeling a tightness in my chest as well. Gradually, Claire regained her confidence and became a regular customer. Though we had a customer-salesperson relationship, we had built a good rapport, but 3 years before I resigned, Claire suddenly stopped showing up. I came back hoping to see you, Chloe, but when I went to your old workplace, they told me you had resigned, and I was so shocked. You came all the way to see me? Sorry for bothering you. But you mentioned coming back, were you overseas? That's right. I actually run a business, and work abroad suddenly got busy. I haven't had American food in years, and I've missed it. So when work finally calmed down, I came back, and after visiting your former workplace, I ended up with appendicitis. And that's how I ended up in this hospital. What? Are you okay? It's just the early stages, so I can take medication to reduce it. Plus, if I were abroad, the treatment would cost many times more, so I'm glad it happened after I came back. Claire said with a laugh, her face as radiant with that familiar dazzling smile. I couldn't help but smile back as if taken back to those years ago. My spirits, which had been quite low, were now lifted, and we found ourselves happily reminiscing about the old times. So, Chloe. You don't have to say if you don't want to, but why were you crying earlier? Claire asked with her kind smile. Although our relationship was originally that of a salesperson and a valued customer, I truly trusted Claire. Thinking that I could tell her. I shared that things weren't going well with my husband and in-laws. I don't feel confident about giving birth to this child in that house and raising them safely. I'm afraid they'll treat the baby just like they treat me. But now, I've quit my job and don't have any prospects for living alone, let alone with two.
Well, I have an apartment available that I could lend to you. As part of my work, I'm managing apartments I built on land I inherited from my parents.
What? I was taken aback by Claire's unexpected offer.
It's in one bedroom with a separate bathroom and toilet, soundproof walls, and it's comfortable. Plus, it's close to supermarkets, grocery stores, and a police station, so it's safe and secure. Right now, there's no deposit required for rent. You can pay the rent later on as you settle in. It's an incredibly great deal. So, what do you think?
Claire rattled on with such fervor that I couldn't help but let out a chuckle. Are you sure you can offer it at such a bargain?
Of course. I know you, Chloe, you have a great character, and I know you'll keep the place clean, so you're more than welcome. I want to help my favorite Chloe.
I'll take you up on that offer, thank you. A few days later. After getting the all clear from the doctor, I was discharged from the hospital without any problems. Claire, who had arranged the apartment over a single phone call while I was hospitalized, had made it ready for me to move in right away, and I decided to shamelessly take full advantage of her generosity. After being discharged, I didn't return home but moved straight into the apartment. Claire's apartment was a beautiful and comfortable place. I felt so grateful and kept wondering if someone like me really should be renting it and if it was okay to pay the rent later, but Claire just laughed it off, saying, "It's totally fine." I would sneak back to my former house during my husband's work hours to take out what I needed. There was hardly anything in the house that was mine after we got married, it felt empty. Claire even went as far as introducing me to a lawyer she had received help from. I was thankful for everything. My mind was completely made up about the divorce. When I told the lawyer, he strongly said, "Let's work hard on this," and it was reassuring. And the baby in my womb was growing healthily without any problems. Today's checkup was also problem-free, and I settled my hospital bill with a sense of relief and stepped outside. Then, "I've found you." My husband was lying in wait in front of the hospital. In a panic, I tried to flee, but with my pregnant body, there was no way I could run. "Stop it." My husband grabbed my arm firmly.
"I finally found you. What's this about hiring a lawyer? Where are you living right now?"
"Nowhere specific, just a safe place. As the lawyer said, I want all further interactions to be through them, not directly."
"You coward! Hiring a lawyer, how dare you get so high and mighty? And what's this about a divorce? What have I done to deserve this?"
"That too, please discuss with the lawyer. I'm expecting compensation for the damage to my dignity and child support. Please be so kind."
You wretch! We're going home."
"What? What are you talking about?"
"I have no intention of paying child support or damage, just so you know. If you come back, all of this will be resolved, that's what my parents said. Come on, let's go." "Wait, stop."
I almost stumbled as he forcefully pulled my arm. But between the difference in strength and my heavily pregnant state, I stood no chance. I was helplessly dragged by my husband towards the car. However, at that moment, a young woman intervened, saying, "What are you doing?" She stood protectively in front of me. And as my husband's grip loosened, I took the chance to pull my arm away. His face filled with astonishment as he looked at the woman. Audrey. I was surprised to see my husband and the woman knew each other, but they continued their exchange without regard for me. What are you doing, Oliver? I'm just here to pick up my wife. She doesn't want to go with you. The woman named Audrey confronted my husband. He was completely taken aback. No, that's not it. My wife, she's pregnant and quite moody. Come on, let's go home. No, I'm not going back. I've already got a lawyer for the divorce. Is that true? So, Oliver, you're trying to forcibly take your wife back home? No. I'm not. Yes, that's what's happening.
Hey! What are you talking about?
My firm statement made my husband's eyes widen with anger, but the woman's expression grew even sterner. You can't force even your wife to do anything. Should I call the police? I'm going home, today. My husband seemed intimidated by the word police and glared at me as he left. Suddenly feeling tense, my body relaxed and my legs began to wobble. The woman quickly supported me. Are you okay? Sorry. I just felt so relieved that I went weak. I'm calling a taxi right now. She efficiently called a taxi and helped me into it. I'm worried, so I'll make sure you get home safely. I can't let you go to all that trouble. It's fine. I'm already involved, and if it's not a bother. Her smile was comforting, and it felt strangely familiar. It's no bother at all. Then that's settled. And your address is? When I gave her my address, her eyes widened in surprise. I can't believe it. You live just below me, Chloe. Audrey, who had escorted me home and took care of me, laughed cheerfully. It was a complete coincidence, but Audrey lived just one floor above of my apartment. And what's more, she was a new employee at my husband Oliver's workplace, and he used to be her mentor. Used to be because his behavior was so appalling that she had complained to her superior and he was replaced. Oliver was known for being harsh with female employees, unsympathetic to issues like menstruation or cold sensitivity, and insensitive about relationships and marriage. It might sound bad to say this in front of his wife, but even when I was in severe menstrual pain and couldn't move well despite medication, he'd say, "Are you kidding me? That's just an excuse. Stop dawdling, ugly." Other than that, apparently, he had a habit of making snide remarks to Audrey, who would leave work on time after finishing all her tasks. I understand. I've been treated like that since I got pregnant. So, it wasn't just at home. I should have known he was like that outside too, sorry about it. You're not at fault at all, Chloe. The one to blame is Oliver. Audrey's firm declaration somehow brought tears to my eyes. A week later. Though we had only met recently, Audrey and I had become close enough to casually share dinners like friends. She told me that my husband had been ordered to transfer to a subsidiary company. Claire is a successful businesswoman who manages several buildings and apartments, and Oliver had boasted at work that he was handling Claire's account. However, Claire had suddenly demanded a change of contact, threatening to sign with another company if it wasn't done, leaving the superiors puzzled. Then, Audrey submitted a statement, recordings of the verbal abuse, and testimonies from female victims accumulated against my husband. Among the projects Claire was promoting was the construction of a women-only apartment building. It was deemed inappropriate for someone who disparaged women and stalked his wife to be in charge. Why did Audrey take such action? I was shocked when I heard it, but it turns out that Audrey was actually Claire's daughter. She had joined the same company as Oliver to gain social experience. Indeed, Audrey was so capable that she easily acquired a more advanced qualification than my husband had. Despite his teasing every time she left on time, asking, "Got a date?" she was diligently studying in any spare time she had. Audrey was determined to solve the workplace issues on her own without relying on her mother's help, but once she found out I was her mother's savior, she couldn't stand by and do nothing. When Claire found out that the problematic supervisor at Audrey's workplace was my husband, she said, Don't hold back, lay out all the evidence. As a result, the choice between a husband with an abnormal amount of complaints from female employees and who lost a major client and a capable new employee who is also the daughter of a client and has advanced qualifications was clear, and the company readily transferred my husband. Since being moved to the subsidiary, Oliver's income decreased, and his workload increased considerably as he was the only one there with a qualification. Chloe, no matter how much Oliver tries to appeal to your sympathy, don't falter in your stance on the divorce. The words of a seasoned businesswoman and divorcee carried a different weight. I nodded firmly in agreement. After that, indeed, Oliver sent emails and messages through the lawyer, crying about how hard work was, how much he missed me, and begging me to come back because he admitted he was at fault. But I didn't waver in my decision to divorce, and with the strong backing of Claire, Oliver reluctantly agreed to the divorce. The damage and child support were to be paid in installments. I had dealt with my husband's issue, but another trouble was my parents-in-law. Especially my father-in-law, who was thrilled about the baby being a boy. I knew something was bound to happen. The tension-filled life continued. And then, my parents-in-law finally made their move. One day, as I was leaving the apartment to go shopping, the one who grabbed my arm was my father-in-law.
How did you find me here? Please, let go. I followed that complaint woman thinking to get back at her, and then saw you coming out of the same apartment.
Complaint woman must be referring to Audrey. Which was an awful way to refer to her because of some misunderstanding.
If you hadn't started with this divorce nonsense. Damn it. For now, just hand over the grandson once he's born. He's the heir to our family.
My father-in-law, who was bigger and stronger than my husband, had a fierce grip. I swung my bag with all my might with my free hand, but he wasn't fazed at all. As I panicked about what to do, a sharp voice called out, "Let go of Chloe." With the voice came a chop to my father-in-law's arm, and his grip loosened. Hi-ya! In an instant, my father-in-law was sent flying through the air. It was a magnificent one-armed shoulder throw that I had never even seen on TV. I later learned that, during Claire's divorce, Audrey had taken up judo to protect Mom. She's apparently certified with the highest class and has won multiple national competitions. And still gets invitations from various places.
You all are the worst,
Audrey exclaimed to my stunned father-in-law, who was not understanding what had just happened. What kind of people overlook their son's misdeeds? What do you think of Chloe and the life in her womb? Chloe is going to build a happy home with her child. And you're trying to interfere with that. Are you monsters? The least you can do is not get in the way of her new start. As Audrey finished saying in disgust, I could hear sirens in the distance. She must have called for help before coming to my aid. Unbeknownst to me, my mother-in-law had been waiting in the car as the driver. Both parents-in-law were taken away by the police. My mother-in-law, perhaps contemplating her actions, kept her face down the entire time. Later, my father-in-law was arrested, and my mother-in-law filed for divorce. She wanted to re-examine her life, which had always been directed by others, and decided to return to the countryside. Oliver pleaded with his mother, saying he wanted to go with her and that he didn't want to work overtime anymore, but she resolutely shook off his hand. My mother-in-law asked the lawyer to tell me she was sorry and left an envelope with some money before leaving. That's what Claire told me. People sometimes don't know what to do after they divorce their husband. Is that how it is? Yes, that's what the experienced say. Claire said, handing me an envelope filled with money. I wonder why she entrusted the lawyer with this money. It must be an apology for what has happened so far, Chloe, and to help with your son's future. Don't hesitate to take it and use it. I had never expected support from my mother-in-law, who had been complicit in many ways. I can't forgive everything that happened, but I hope she takes her time to regain her own life. After the divorce was finalized, I safely gave birth to a boy. And then, my mother-in-law seems to be living in the countryside. I don't know the details because she's on her own, but she probably refused to live with Oliver. After my father-in-law was released, He found the house in his wife's name had been demolished and he frantically moved in with Oliver. There was a fierce argument about supporting and not supporting, which led to the police being called. As a result, Oliver's reputation at his company worsened, and he resigned voluntarily. Where he went after that is unknown, but child support is still paid without fail. Probably Claire and the lawyer know of Oliver's whereabouts. As for Audrey, her hard work was recognized, and she seems to have become a project leader at work. She's especially admired by her young colleagues and enjoys her work. Claire's projects, women-only properties and properties for foreigners wanting to settle in the US, are progressing well. As for me, once my son is old enough to be left with someone else, I plan to return to work. A high-end cosmetics store is set to open in one of the buildings Claire manages, and I've been invited to be part of the opening staff. Claire, I don't know how to return this favor, thank you for everything. Even after all problems were resolved, Claire continued to take care of me and doted on my son as if he were her own grandchild. Audrey also visits often when she has the time. Compared to the favor you did for me, Chloe, I haven't done anything significant. Thanks to you doing my makeup, I gained confidence in myself. I'm just repaying a favor to my benefactor. I still owe you more than enough. Oh, I can't wait for Chloe to return to work. Your magic touch makes everyone happy. Do my makeup again, okay? Of course, I will. I nodded, my eyes brimming with tears, as Claire laughed brightly. For my son and all my benefactors, I resolved to become as strong as them and protect my son.
I'm giving you, a defective person who can't even have kids, a chance to gain parenting experience. Be grateful. My husband said astonishingly, walking out of the house cheerfully with Ashley. I sat there, disappointed in my husband who prioritized Ashley over me, his wife, listening to the sound of Ashley's kids wreaking havoc inside our home. Despite my husband's persistent preference for his ex-girlfriend, I had hoped and endured, believing he would eventually understand. But I had reached my limit and decided to contact someone. My name is Katie, 31 years old. I met my husband, Jack, through a matchmaking party and we've been married for 3 years. Working from home, I rarely had opportunities to meet new people and felt the pressure as my friends got married one after the other. Being an only child, I was also eager to give my parents grandchildren. That's why I chose to go to the party, where I met Jack, who shared my values. We married shortly after dating as he, too, felt the pressure of being unmarried. We had no problem staying together, so we got married soon after we met. I thought it was a good decision at the time. However, our inability to conceive soon became a source of distress. 2 years passed without a child, and Jack grew discontent, blaming me for our infertility. Yet, medical tests showed no issues on my part. Despite his harsh words, the test results gave me hope that together, we could overcome this. But Jack refused to visit the clinic with me, blaming me alone. Hey, don't you want a baby? Let's get checked together.
I suggested even undergoing fertility treatments in my eagerness for a child. However, when it comes to children, I absolutely need his cooperation. I kept pleading with Jack to take this seriously.
Why should I go to a clinic? It's your fault, you infertile woman.
But my husband just made fun of me and refused to cooperate. And blaming me for our childlessness. Until now, even if my husband complained, I had hoped he was just anxious about not having kids. But his lack of understanding shocked me. Nonetheless, I continued to try to persuade him. I believed that someday he would understand one day. Then, Jack was transferred, and we moved in April. He wanted to live in his hometown, and since I could work from anywhere, I didn't object. Our new rented house, larger than the last. It allowed me a dedicated workspace, which delighted me. I thought I could concentrate on work. Close to his parents yet maintaining a healthy distance, our relationship with them was good. The place seemed more comfortable than I expected, so the new environment seemed promising. After organizing our belongings, we went shopping to get accustomed to our new life. As Jack showed me around, we walked around the store. I noticed some kids, likely siblings. They were running around the store so fast that I thought it was dangerous, but I was able to finish my shopping without incident. Exiting the store, I heard a woman calling Jack's name. She was pushing a stroller, a stranger to me, but Jack greeted her with a joyous smile.
Ashley? It's been so long.
Since high school. How've you been? I was surprised because my husband was so friendly. I thought they were friends, but not recalling her from his friends at our wedding. Curious, I asked Jack about her. You two seem close. A friend?
Oh. She's my ex-girlfriend from high school,
he said cheerfully, leaving me speechless. I couldn't have expected him to happily tell me, his wife, that she was his ex-girlfriend, and I was taken aback. Unaware of my shock, Ashley spoke to me. You're Jack's wife? I was his junior in high school and his ex-girlfriend. Surprised, I didn't know how to respond. Listening to their conversation, I learned Ashley had married right after high school, had kids. She is now a single mother, helped by her parents. It's really busy with 5 kids, she said, emphasizing her struggles. The children running around in the store were hers, I realized in astonishment. I thought she seemed like an insane person, but when she said that she had 5 children, I was surprised and looked at her. Ashley, with her heavy makeup and flashy, revealing clothes, didn't look like a mom at all, especially not one who just had kids. She still maintained her figure, which I had to admit was impressive. Hearing this, I realized she could mention her past with Jack so casually because it was just a memory for her. Then Jack said something outrageous. That's tough. Hey, we don't have kids and you're always welcome to come over and relax at our house.
Really? That'd be a huge help with all my kids.
Unbelievably, Jack suggested our home as a makeshift daycare. And Ashley seemed all too eager to take advantage, so I immediately objected.
What? Look, I work from home, so that's not gonna work.
I was irritated by Jack's casual attitude and Ashley's presumptuousness. Despite my cold response, Jack chastised me. Ashley's got it tough, you know? Looking after her kids would be a good deed. Plus, it's like practice for us, ain't it? Ashley had been left by her husband, struggling alone. For some reason, Jack was all too eager to help her. It made me angry, considering his lack of support in our fertility journey.
That's why I don't have time for this. If you want to look after kids, do it yourself.
Why should I, a complete stranger to her, sacrifice my time? Especially for someone as imposing as Ashley.
You don't have to be so harsh. That's mean.
Contrary to my natural objection, Ashley played the victim, tears in her eyes. What's with you, Katie?
Ashley's doing her best alone, and you won't even help?
Seeing Ashley like that, Jack scolded me, comforting her. Seeing this, I feared our new life, which I had been looking forward to, would become a nightmare. And true to form, Ashley started bringing her kids over without any hesitation. At first, I refused to let them in, turning them away at the doorstep. But the kids caused trouble outside, disturbing the neighbors. Apparently, Ashley hardly disciplined them, leaving them to run wild like animals. I managed to keep them out, knowing they'd wreak havoc inside. Yet, Jack, having heard from Ashley, blamed me for not letting them in, leading to a fight.
I don't want strangers in the house. They'll just make a mess.
Don't be so narrow-minded. That's just mean. Plus, wouldn't it be good for you to get some practice with kids? Ashley's kids ranged from a 3rd grader to a newborn. Jack argued that taking care of them would be good practice for when we have our own, despite my protests. No matter how much I said I didn't like it, my husband didn't understand, no matter how much I explained to him, and in the end, he gave the duplicate key to her. When I discovered her entering our home uninvited, I trembled with fear. As he even gave Ashley the key, we had a huge fight. Despite my efforts, the kids turned the rest of the house upside down while I protected my workspace. They ignored my warnings, running around and knocking things over. Ashley, ever imposing, demanded soft drinks and snacks, and even dinner when Jack came home. It was impossible to prepare meals for so many on short notice. Of course, I refused, but Jack sided with her, forcing me to make arrangements. Ashley didn't contribute to the additional food costs. When I mentioned it to Jack, he just said to cover it ourselves.
Ashley's struggling with 5 kids. Don't be stingy. We don't have kids, so it shouldn't be a problem for us.
His lack of concern for our finances frustrated me.
This is our money. If you're so concerned, Jack, why don't you cover everything?
When I suggested Jack pay all Ashley-related expenses, he argued that as his wife, I should help. This led to constant fighting because of Ashley. Moreover, I heard that Ashley's parents were working to support their grandchildren, so she wasn't as desperate as she let on. She showed little interest in her kids, barely responding when they talked to her. She focused on herself and neglected them. It was probably why her kids were not disciplined and so unruly. The eldest, not even 10, seemed to take care of the younger ones. It was annoying though, I felt sorry for the kids. But I had my own life to lead. I taught them basic rules for being in our house, which calmed things down a bit. But why should I, a total stranger, have to do all this? My work was disrupted, and the extra housework piled up, leaving me furious at Jack and Ashley. It got worse when school let out for summer and the kids started coming over every day. Ashley was here so often, I wondered if she even worked. They stay at home all day more than ever before, expecting lunch, too. I was at my wits' end. Jack was no help, and Ashley just played the victim. It seemed impossible to resolve anything through discussion. I didn't know what to do, so I started to worry. Then one day, Ashley came over again, expecting me to take care of her kids.
I'm going on a trip for 3 days from today. Please look after my kids,
she announced cheerily, carrying her suitcase.
What? For 3 days? That's a problem.
I was taken aback by her sudden request. Despite her parents being around, why was she leaving her kids with me?
Well, the kids prefer being here. And while you're at it, please help them with their summer homework and make some memories,
she said, completely disregarding my feelings. I was livid and opposed her, but she wouldn't listen. Then, to my surprise, Jack showed up at the door, suitcase in hand, smiling beside Ashley. I was confused, as Jack hadn't mentioned any travel plans. Then he dropped a bombshell.
Well, I'm off on a trip with Ashley. The kids are your responsibility. What? What do you mean?
I was dumbfounded by his announcement. When I confronted him, he arrogantly retorted.
I'm giving you, a defective who can't even have kids, a chance to gain parenting experience.
Be grateful. He seemed to think he was doing this for my benefit. He was basking in his self-righteousness. Then they left, suitcases in hand, leaving me in shock. I quickly contacted Jack, insisting it was impossible and asking why he was traveling. He explained it was to give Ashley, abandoned by her husband. As she was raising 5 kids alone, he suggested a break at a luxury resort. I had never been taken on a trip by Jack, nor had I been pampered like that. I was speechless with rage. But the sound of the kids wreaking havoc snapped me back to reality. I couldn't survive 3 days like this. My trust and hope in Jack were completely gone. I had to seek help, so I reached out to someone. 3 days later, around noon, Jack and Ashley returned, looking happy. But their smiles faded upon seeing me.
Welcome back. Did you enjoy your trip?
I asked cheerfully, contrary to their expectation of a worn-out me.
Yeah, it was great. But where are the kids?
They're quiet. Sleeping? Ashley was flustered, surprised by the absence of the usually noisy kids.
No, they're awake. Hey! Your mom's back from her trip.
When I called them, they came to the entrance, calm and quiet, a stark contrast to their previous wild behavior. Ashley was shocked at their transformation into well-behaved children. She was distraught and couldn't believe the change in the children's behavior. Because they used polite language and learned manners.
Katie, thank you so much for everything. Come on, Mom, make sure to thank her properly. After being told by her kids to apologize for their past behavior, Ashley became almost hysterical. Why have my kids changed like this? What did you do? She was upset by the change in her children, who had always been obedient and never defied her before. As she ranted, Jack and Ashley noticed someone emerging from behind the kids and turned pale. Why are my brother and sister here? Jack, never expecting family involvement, asked tremblingly, like a child caught misbehaving. What are you doing not protecting your family? I heard about the situation from Katie and came to help. You're her husband and not helping your wife? My brother-in-law and sister-in-law looked at Jack with a mix of disdain and anger. When Jack and Ashley left for their trip, I realized I couldn't handle all 5 kids alone, so I asked my sister-in-law for help. Knowing she was a childcare worker, I explained the situation and begged for her assistance. She, angered by Jack's actions, immediately came over to support me. Moreover, she informed my brother-in-law, who also came to help as he was off work. He's a middle school teacher and former athlete, so he's physically strong. It made the kids ecstatic to play with him. Both being experienced with children due to their jobs, they redisciplined the kids in 3 days, turning them into polite and well-mannered children. After hearing my story, they assured me they were on my side and ready to help, comforting me with smiles. I wished I had asked them for help sooner. Why are you relying on my brother and sister? What are you doing? What have you done to my kids? Both Jack and Ashley tried to blame me, but they were silenced by disapproving stares from my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and even the kids. Jack, having always felt inferior to his more accomplished elder siblings, was visibly uneasy. My sister-in-law scolded him. You're married and yet you're prioritizing an ex-girlfriend? And she cheated on you in high school, remember? She knew Ashley from high school and disliked her for being a gossip and flattering boys. I was shocked to learn that Ashley's infidelity was the reason for their breakup. I'd thought they parted amicably or just drifted apart. I never expected that my husband would be on the side of the person who cheated on him. As a man, I can't believe what you're doing. My brother-in-law added, further shrinking Jack. Frustrated, I handed Jack the contact number of a lawyer. I can't do this anymore. Let's get divorced right away. Divorce? Why? Jack was shocked, not expecting this, and his reaction only fueled my anger. Did you think I didn't know anything? I showed him the evidence of his affair with Ashley. While they were on the trip, I searched Jack's belongings and computer. I'd suspected infidelity due to his favoritism towards Ashley, but never had proof until now. Therefore, when I took this opportunity to thoroughly investigate my husband's luggage and computer, I was able to easily find evidence of his affair. I found clear evidence, including their trip reservation details left on his computer. I even went to the resort they were staying at and photographed them in the act. I wore a hat and mask, and Jack, oblivious to my presence, was enjoying himself with Ashley, mocking me. It was clear he saw me as nothing more than a convenient housekeeper and source of money. I was filled with anger and sadness, wondering what all the time spent with Jack meant. As I laid out the evidence of his cheating, Jack gradually lost his ability to argue back. Realizing the proof of his infidelity and the cold stares from everyone but Ashley, he resignedly agreed a divorce. Ashley, sensing she was at a disadvantage, perhaps wanting to escape a space with her disliked sister-in-law, urged Jack to leave. Let's get out of this family, Jack replied, trying to sound tough. Yeah, I don't need Katie anyway. As they attempted to flee with the kids, but they were unable to do so. Ashley's parents appeared at the door. What? Why are you two here? Ashley was surprised, and the kids joyfully ran to their grandparents. Ashley's parents looked tired but angry at her. I had found their contact information while searching for evidence of the affair and had informed them of Ashley's actions and the trip with my husband. They apologized and agreed to help me. You cheated again. You were divorced because of you, haven't you learned? Ashley's mother slapped her in the face. Ashley's father, amidst the chaos,
was guiding the children outside, shielding them from the situation.
What? An affair and divorce?
Jack looked at Ashley, confused. Although Ashley had claimed her divorce was her husband's fault, the truth was different. Ashley had been unfaithful, and it turned out she had another child, making a total of 6. The oldest was from her marriage, so her ex-husband took custody, but the fathers of the other children were unknown. After the divorce, Ashley, with nowhere else to go, moved back in with her parents. Despite starting work to support their grandchildren, Ashley hadn't changed her ways. She continued to neglect her job, leading a frivolous life, resulting in more children. Occasionally, her simultaneous relationships with multiple partners led to complicated situations, burdening her parents. Frustrated, her parents were already quite stern with her, and Ashley, tired of their scolding, ended up imposing on me at my house.
What? You've been seeing other people besides me? And the youngest isn't mine.
Jack, apparently unaware of this, was shocked. The interaction between Jack and Ashley on his computer had started with a message from Ashley a year ago, seeking help. She was abandoned by her husband and is living a difficult life. She portrayed herself as a victim, abandoned by her husband and struggling. I never understood what Jack saw in Ashley, but her acting skills were certainly persuasive. Deceived by her act and the allure of an old flame, Jack eagerly replied and even made arrangements to meet her. This had happened about 8 months ago, when Jack told me he was going away on a business trip. Later, when Ashley claimed her youngest child was Jack's, he became even more supportive of her. Jack's transfer appeared to be influenced by Ashley's proximity and his desire to be near his supposed child. With no children between us, Jack seemed willing to defend Ashley to be with his own child. However, the timing of Jack's encounter with Ashley and the child's birth did not match. The period between their meeting and the pregnancy was too short for the child to be Jack's. If Jack had taken pregnancy and child-rearing seriously, he would have realized this sooner. I was astounded by Jack's gullibility. Upon realizing he had no children with Ashley, Jack fell into despair and sat down, overwhelmed. He had always wanted children quickly and was deeply affected by this revelation. Despite everything being exposed, Ashley still insisted she was the victim, desperately asserting her innocence.
I'm the victim here. I just want to live a happy life, but because of the alimony, I can't do what I want.
Her mother, unable to contain her anger, slapped Ashley, silencing her. The children, returning out of concern, calmly began to admonish their mother.
Mom, you're the one at fault. You need to apologize properly.
Ashley, caught off guard by her children's words, flushed with anger but was further reprimanded by her parents and finally broke down crying.
Why do I have to suffer like this?
She left, dragged away by her parents, still in tears. The children, full of energy, thanked us for taking care of them and returned home. I was moved by their transformation and admired their growth. Waving goodbye to the well-mannered children, I smiled. My crying husband was taken back to his parents' home by my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Despite his resistance, my brother-in-law easily subdued and escorted him away. I was grateful to them for their reliable support. Afterward, I successfully completed the divorce. Jack, realizing he had been deceived, began pleading for reconciliation, but I refused. His pleas of changing his ways were too late. I knew his affair had affected his company reputation, leading to a lower salary. Why should I be with someone who only saw me as a convenient woman? I informed my brother-in-law and sister-in-law about Jack's attempts to reconcile, and they assured me they would handle it. After that, I never received another email from Jack, giving me peace of mind. Once the divorce was finalized, I moved to a new place and now enjoy a peaceful life on my own. Previously, my life was disturbed by my indifferent husband and Ashley, along with their unruly children. Now, I relish the comfort of living alone. I have time to reflect on my rushed marriage. I had feared that leaving Jack would leave me without options, enduring his terrible behavior rather than considering divorce. Looking back, I regret not divorcing sooner to avoid wasting time. If I ever decide to remarry, I'll take my time to find someone truly compatible.
Jason, I think my water broke. Can you take me to the hospital?
That's gross. Just have a baby somehow. Jason was carrying a big bag, heading towards the front door. I'm heading on a trip now. Just have it somehow. I was in disbelief. What does he mean by have it somehow?
I can't even get to the hospital like this. At least call a cab.
No way. That's a hassle.
Can't you have it without causing trouble for others?
The door slammed shut, and there I was, left alone in the room, holding my belly. I was sweating badly, yet the room felt suddenly cold. Would a husband really go on a trip leaving his wife about to have a baby? I never imagined this when I got pregnant. I never thought I'd ever face something like that. This grudge will stay with me for life. My feelings towards my husband grew increasingly intense. We've been married for a year. I got pregnant with our long-awaited baby. I'm Linda, a 24-year-old office worker. I married Jason, my college classmate, right after graduation. For Jason, college was local, but my hometown was far, only reachable by plane. I thought about going back home to work, but we couldn't bear to be apart, so we got married. Jason had a lot of friends locally, and news of his early marriage spread quickly, bringing many congratulations. This is a so-called regional city, with universities and companies located downtown, and fields in the suburbs. We live in a typical regional city. Jason's parents are divorced, and his mother lives alone in a house in the suburbs. She's very friendly, and we hit it off right away. Sometimes she brings us produce from her garden, making me grateful for such a wonderful mother-in-law. However, Jason started acting differently shortly after I got pregnant. He became moody and sometimes spoke harshly. His overtime and business trips increased, leaving him less time at home. In the early pregnancy, Jason, even not knowing the baby's gender, wanted baby clothes, furniture, and toys for older ages. I smiled at his excitement, happy to share the joy of our baby's arrival. Especially on Wednesdays, he seemed to work late. He'd come home unusually energetic, usually cooking dinner. I didn't know Jason liked cooking so much. I lived with my mom for a long time. I have many specialties. But actually, Jason's cooking was often too rich or oily for my changed taste during pregnancy. You don't need to cook when you're tired. Let me do this much. Sorry, but I can't eat much these days. It'd be a waste if I couldn't eat what you made. I tried to refuse gently, but he slapped me. I couldn't believe what was happening.
You're saying you can't eat my food?
I didn't mean it like that. My body's just different because of the pregnancy.
Always the pregnancy excuse. There are pregnant women at my work who still work and eat normally.
I touched my still stinging cheek, choosing my words carefully. I had a lot to say back. But I didn't want to provoke him further. Being compared to other pregnant women was frustrating.
Everyone's different. You keep buying spices and ingredients for cooking and wasting them. It's a waste of food expenses too. So it's all about money, huh? You're such a stingy woman.
Jason clicked his tongue, taking all the food back to his room. I was left with unspoken words swirling in my head, and I hardly slept that night. After that, Jason stopped cooking and started eating out more often on his late nights. He wouldn't tell me and would come home after eating, leaving me with extra food I prepared for him, and demanding more money for dining out, straining our finances even more. I decided to take maternity leave a bit early. It was my first pregnancy and I was full of anxiety, and my health was worse than expected, making it impossible for me to work. Even when I decided to take maternity leave, Jason was full of sarcasm.
Aren't you just being lazy? That's not it. I really feel unwell. Plus, I haven't stopped doing the housework.
Housework is just like odd jobs. It doesn't even make a penny. It seemed like in Jason's view, I just lazed around all day. Despite his opposition, I somehow managed to start my maternity leave. I thought I could relax at home, But with hospital visits, managing my health, and more demanding housework, my days were tougher than ever. One evening, I got a call from my senior, Ashley. She was a year ahead of me in college and worked at the same company as Jason. She was a leader during our student days, almost like a sister to me. "How are you? Is the pregnancy going well?"
Hey, Ashley, aren't you working late today?
"No, it's my day off."
But today's Wednesday, right? Jason always seems busy on Wednesdays and comes home late.
"That's odd. Our company has a no overtime policy on Wednesdays. We're practically kicked out if we try to work." Ashley's words confused me. Then what was Jason doing every Wednesday coming home late? She seemed to sense my bewilderment. "I'll keep an eye on Jason's work situation from now on," she offered to help. That same night, Jason came home late again and went straight to the bathroom without saying anything. His phone was lying face down on the table. I was wiping the table and accidentally dropped his phone. "Oh no, I hope it didn't get scratched," I thought, picking it up. The message screen was left open. I only saw it for a second, but there were messages with red heart emojis. He never used such emojis in our messages. A suspicion flickered in my mind. Could it be an affair? As I stood frozen, Jason came out of the bathroom saying, "Shoot, I forgot something." He was half-dressed. Seeing me with his phone, he exploded in anger.
What the heck? Why are you snooping through my phone? It's not like that. I accidentally dropped it. I was just checking for damages. How stupid can you be? I always tell you to do the housework properly. Look at this phone, now there's a scratch on it.
But his phone screen was already cracked. I couldn't tell where the new scratch was.
Supporting you seems like such a loss. You can't even do housework properly, and now you're trying to break my phone. It was an accident. Your backtalk is also annoying.
Jason grabbed his phone angrily and returned to the bathroom. His forgotten item was apparently the phone. Taking a phone to the bathroom. With a sense of unease, my suspicion of infidelity grew. As my due date approached, Jason's mother said she would visit. She mentioned bringing seasonal vegetables from her garden. She was concerned about bothering me during this important time, but I was eager to hear her advice on childbirth and welcomed her. I cleaned the house from top to bottom that morning and even put on makeup, ready to welcome her. Jason seemed to have taken the day off and was at home. But he seemed to be going somewhere, packing a big bag.
Are you going somewhere today? Your mom is coming soon.
What? I didn't hear about that.
I told you. But what about that bag?
I stopped mid-sentence as a terrible pain hit my belly. A shocking sensation coursing through me. I felt something special happening to my body. Soon, a warm fluid began to trickle down my legs.
Jason, I think my water broke. Can you take me to the hospital?
Water broke? What's that, like peeing yourself?
No, it's not that. The baby's trying to come out.
That's nasty. Just have the baby yourself. Jason picked up a large bag and headed towards the front door. I'm going on a trip now. Just have it.
In this situation, I can't even get to the hospital. Can you at least call a cab?
No way. That's a hassle. Can't you have it without bothering anyone? As he said this, Jason called a taxi using his phone. It seemed he was actually calling one. The taxi will be here soon. I felt relieved. Despite everything, there was still some kindness left in him. But as soon as Jason saw the taxi arrive in front of the apartment, he left alone. The floor around me was already soaked.
Can you at least help me walk? I'll try my best.
What? You're coming too? That taxi is for me to go to the airport. Don't be so clingy. I was speechless with shock. Jason left without a second glance, getting into the taxi. I felt utterly abandoned. My phone was in another room. As I attempted to crawl there, someone knocked on the door. It was my mother-in-law. She saw my condition and immediately took me to the hospital in her car. Amidst the overwhelming pain, we somehow made it to the hospital. From there, everything was a blur of activity, leaving me no room to think. When I came to, a newborn baby was in my arms, making soft, indistinct sounds. "It's over," I sighed with relief. The baby, unaware of the chaos before its birth, was experiencing its first breaths of air. Fortunately, the baby was healthy and full of energy. As I rested in the hospital room, my mother-in-law came with some food.
Why were you alone at home? Didn't Jason say he was taking the day off?
Well, just before you were supposed to arrive, he left for a trip.
A trip? Leaving his wife in her final month of pregnancy? That's unbelievable.
When my water broke, Jason didn't do anything. He just said to have the baby myself and left. My usually gentle mother-in-law was furious, a look I had never seen before.
He said that? That's unbelievable.
However, the fact that Jason wasn't home when she arrived and the water-soaked floor was undeniable. My mother-in-law had to accept the truth. The next day, my parents arrived from our hometown. I explained the situation to them. I also contacted Ashley, who was hesitant to visit so soon after the birth, but upon hearing I had something important to say, she made time to come. Actually, when my water broke, Jason just left for a trip.
What do you mean?
I don't know. He never mentioned any trip plans before, and it was all sudden on the day. I asked him to at least call a taxi, but he took it himself to go to the airport. Ashley was furious upon hearing what happened. Then my mother-in-law arrived for a visit, trying to keep the mood light.
Linda, I hate to say this in front of your mother-in-law, but you should divorce him right away. I can't stop you. But doing it right now might be difficult. I feel awkward saying this in front of you.
With that preamble, Ashley began to speak. Jason might be cheating. There's a woman named Emma in his department he's close to. Those two have taken leave together until tomorrow.
Isn't that just speculation?
Actually, I saw them walking hand in hand in the downtown area. And there's more evidence I can't reveal here, but it's significant. So, was Jason really having an affair? Was this trip with his mistress? No matter how much I doubted, after giving birth, I had no free time at all. Catching bits of sleep was all I could manage. When I muttered this, both my mother-in-law and Ashley's eyes sparkled. "We'll help you," they said in unison. I didn't want to stay in that house anymore. "I'll help with anything," they both offered, and I shared my thoughts.
That's easy. Use my spare room. You can also stay at my place.
Gratefully accepting their offer, I decided to live with my mother-in-law for a while after the birth. They even offered to move my clothes and baby items to my mother-in-law's house. I felt bad, but I could hardly move out of bed. Even going to the bathroom alone was a struggle. I gladly accepted their kindness. My mother-in-law and Ashley kept visiting me. My mother-in-law seemed happy to see her grandchild every time she visited, never complaining. She even showed me pictures of my belongings. They were moved into her spacious room, which looked very comfortable. Ashley helped a lot with the move. I couldn't help but be grateful to them. One day, while talking with my mother-in-law in the hospital room, my phone rang. It was Jason. I hesitated to answer, but my mother-in-law silently shook her head. I haven't even told Jason about the baby being born.
Just ignore him. Let him figure things out on his own.
My mother-in-law seemed to have given up on Jason far more than I had. The phone kept ringing. Thankfully, my room was private. I reluctantly answered in speaker mode.
I'm in the hospital room. I can't talk for long. I just got back from the trip. Why are all our things gone? I've decided to live separately from you. Did you enjoy your trip? Never mind that. Did the baby get born? The baby was born safely.
Jason's loud voice came through the phone.
Why didn't you contact me right away? Don't mess with me, I'm the father. I don't recognize you as a father after you left for a trip while I was in labor and being rough. Don't be stupid. Who do you think provides for you?
My mother-in-law frowned beside me. Ignoring Jason's loud voice, I calmly retorted.
What are you doing at work, Jason? Having an affair? That's not true.
His voice became low.
Someone said they saw you walking downtown with a woman named Emma. Did you go on the trip with her?
There was a sharp intake of breath from the other end. Jason's momentum seemed to falter. Still, he said this in a bluffing voice.
Don't talk nonsense. Don't forget that you ignored me.
Oh, I have to go.
It's feeding time.
I abruptly ended the call. My mother-in-law apologized to me.
I can't believe Jason talks like that. I'm so sorry, Linda. It's my fault for how I raised him. You're not to blame. The reason I divorced his father was because of his violence. His way of talking just now scared me, reminded me of his father.
Her expression was gloomy, probably recalling her difficult past. I hugged my mother-in-law's shoulders.
You had a hard time. Don't worry, I'll handle my situation. You're carrying too much on your own. You've been working so hard. The house was always spotless, and you did your housework well. I had to be careful. Jason would get angry if I slacked off. He just doesn't understand how hard it is to be pregnant. I'll keep that in mind. Can I borrow your house tomorrow?
My mother-in-law left these mysterious words and left the hospital room. The next day, she gathered people at my house, including Jason, his mistress Emma, and Ashley. I received a video call from Ashley. I had heard that I would be contacted, so I was preparing. My familiar home appears on the screen. They were all sitting around the table. My mother-in-law had confronted Jason and forced him to contact his mistress.
So, it's true that you two are having an affair? Don't call it an affair, and besides.
Jason stuttered for a while, then started muttering.
What can I do? Linda got pregnant, and I couldn't touch her anymore.
Ashley spat out, that's despicable.
When Linda got pregnant, Emma approached me. She was kinder than I could ever imagine, unlike Linda. Linda was pregnant, it's natural for her to be overwhelmed. Didn't you think to support Linda during her pregnancy?
I couldn't hold back and intervened.
Well, that was impossible. Ever since I got pregnant, he just used work as an excuse to go out. Looking back, he was probably visiting his mistress. Everyone cheats, right? That's what men do. Don't say stupid things.
The room went silent at Ashley's outrage.
Don't lump all men with someone as low as you. What proof do you have? I'll sue for defamation.
There is proof.
I saw Emma's phone. Here it is.
Ashley spread out printed messages and photos on the table.
How did you get these? Emma, you left your password written on a note at your desk. I used it on your phone when you were away. And I found evidence of your affair.
The messages were full of red hearts, discussing plans for a trip together. And there were many pictures of them as a couple. I felt dizzy.
A man who cheats during his wife's pregnancy doesn't deserve to be a father.
I agree.
I can't stand to see my friends suffer like this.
Jason's image, leaving me behind to go on a trip while I was in labor, flashed in my mind. I was in danger, along with my child. I couldn't forgive this man. I had to make a decision. Otherwise, I won't be able to move forward.
Jason, let's get a divorce.
My mother-in-law and Ashley applauded.
Why now? Isn't this the toughest time with a newborn? Who made it tougher? I don't want a father like you. Right. I don't recognize you as my son. Divorce? You're not thinking straight after giving birth. You're the one not thinking straight. Who would forgive a husband who cheats during pregnancy and leaves during labor? Calm down. At that time, Emma was more important to me. That's terrible. I can't believe you're human.
Then, someone visited the house. My mother-in-law answered, "Who is it?" A middle-aged man came in, introducing himself as Emma's husband. It turned out Emma was married, and Jason knew it since they were working in the same company. Her husband had suspected something and followed Emma today. Seeing the evidence of the affair, he was devastated. He had been worried for some time that his wife was cheating on him, but now he is convinced.
Your wife was cheating with this man during his wife's pregnancy.
Emma's husband declared divorce, and she shrieked,
"I can't! I'm pregnant too!"
The room buzzed. She had planned to keep her pregnancy a secret until the stable period, but I had a feeling it wasn't true. "Who's the father?" "I don't want a child whose father is unknown," her husband said coldly. I agreed with him. Emma apparently had a 3-year-old daughter and was expecting her second child. She worked part-time, supposedly for childcare. But she used her free time for the affair. Her husband must have felt betrayed as well. Her husband declared he would take care of their daughter, saying Emma was no longer a mother.
All of you just don't get it. Fine, I'll marry Emma and we'll happily raise the child together.
Jason boldly declared this, but a green document was subtly handed to him. Emma's husband had apparently brought divorce papers. It was with a lawyer's contact. Jason reached for the divorce papers, but they were swiftly pulled back. Then came the resounding words, "Let's talk about child support and division of property."
Why should I pay them? I'll need money for the baby that's coming. I need money too. You're planning to leave your child and go to another woman, right? I'll definitely claim them.
My mother-in-law nodded in agreement. Jason slammed his fist on the table.
It's all your fault for getting pregnant. I still wanted to have fun.
How can you say that? Have you ever thought about the baby? Tears welled up in my eyes. But my mother-in-law's words brought me back to reality.
Don't just say things that suit you. Clean up your own mess. Come on, Mom, help me out here. I refuse. Didn't I say you're not my son anymore?
After much argument, it was decided that I would demand child support from Jason. Emma's husband planned to do the same. Thanks to Emma's husband, we were able to contact the lawyer on the spot. My mother-in-law and Ashley agreed to be witnesses. They would bring the papers to the hospital room later. After finishing breastfeeding, I waited in the room until they arrived. I signed the papers to start divorce process and handed them to my mother-in-law. I felt a sense of relief, having accomplished a big task. Though I was full of anxiety about raising a child on my own, when I looked up, I saw the reassuring smiles of 2 strong women. I had one request for Ashley. She promptly fulfilled it. I asked her to spread the word about Jason's actions throughout the company. In this small city, where relationships among acquaintances are strong, strange rumors can be damaging. While I worked at a different company and wasn't originally from this area, rumors wouldn't affect me much. My mother-in-law promised to block any information that might come my way. The effect was immediate.
Linda, I spread the rumor. Our company values integrity. If there are odd rumors, you can't work properly. Thank you. I'm sorry for asking you to do something so strange. That's okay, those 2 had poor performance anyway. Now, they won't get any important tasks, and nobody at the company talks to them anymore. They're also from this area, so their friends know about it too.
They had many friends locally, but everyone distanced themselves. Losing both their jobs and friends, they had nothing to rely on. Emma's husband decided to live with the first child, and the child wouldn't warm up to her during visits. Jason and Emma left the company, but finding new jobs was difficult as they had acquaintances everywhere. Now, Jason had moved out of our shared apartment and was living in a small place with Emma. According to my mother-in-law, who heard from neighbors, they constantly argued. It seemed fine while they were dating, but living together was another story. Considering child support and the care for the upcoming baby, they couldn't easily separate. I decided to stay with my mother-in-law during my maternity leave.
Taking care of my grandchild is wonderful. It reminds me of when I was raising kids, and it makes me feel young again.
She happily took care of the baby. During my leave, I helped in her garden whenever I had free time. It wasn't an obligation, but being outside under the blue sky was a good change of pace. Though I ended up living in this area by chance, I was beginning to appreciate the beauty of living surrounded by nature. Now, I return to work. After moving and getting accustomed to life in a new home with my child, I feel hopeful about starting anew. My mother-in-law assures me, "Come over anytime. I'll help you." Filled with hope for my new life, I'm ready to embrace the future.